All right. Tanya? Here. Libby? Here. Becky? Here. Robert? Here. Fritz? Here. I declare we have a quorum. Okay, I kind of get a motion to approve the minutes. Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I'm gonna move things around a little bit tonight, just to make it easy on everybody. Got a lot of moving around. I had a resident call me earlier today about their parking. Do you want to, Jamie, do you want to move up? Talk about your parking first. Jeremy, yeah, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Yeah.
Not a real comfort level for me here, but long story short, back September of 21, I contacted Adam about the space that I have. I'm at 325 West Broadway. Personal impressions, street, joint, and then that was my neighbor, Aaron Bale. Aaron and I have had great relationship forever. I accessed part of my parking from the entryway from Aaron's. I have 12 spots now that are on the parked area. I have 5 that are back on gravel. Like I said, Aaron and I have had years of shared parking, no problem. Talked to Adam about me expanding into a suite D. We went through a bunch of stuff. September 16th or February 16th of last year, I did what he asked for me to do, which was send everything, get a state release. I got the state release. After the state release was more, I went to Adam. I got my building permit. After my building permit, he did it on March 30th. He talked about spaces there. He said I only had 10 spaces. But at that time, he was like, he issued me the building permit. He claimed that he asked me for, he said at that point in time, he didn't have any problem with it. You know, maybe in the future he might, but then he would let me go. So step forward, I've put in $40,000 into my renovation at this point. I originally had a golf law firm that was going to go in there. They had to back out for whatever reason. I do got a new tenant that wants it. There's 2 ladies. She's a high-end hairstylist. She's bringing in all of her clients from like Carmel, Noblesville area. She was at Ironworks for a long time, which Ironworks in Keystone is one of the most expensive places ever. So she will be open primarily from 9 to 5, which I specifically look for somebody that would be a good tenant to come in, because Greeks is more of a nighttime. My parking lot's virtually empty all day. So come to September 12th, you know, Adam asked me to put 2 more parking spots in, which I found a way to do that, put them in, and now he's asking me to get a written permission from Aaron Bale to be able to come across this parking spot, which I don't know anybody knows Aaron. Aaron's a wonderful guy, but he's not somebody that's gonna sign anything anyway. So that's why I'm here. I'm asking for help on this. It's just an issue that continues to be brought up and brought up and brought up. And at this point, I put a lot of money in it, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I don't feel like I should have to continue to do this. And I've got record of timeline. I got emails back and forth. If anybody wants a copy of the timeline, it's really all I have to say on the matter. But
Do you remember what the alley that used to be there? Did it ever come out to the road? The alley behind Napa.
Behind that,
Yeah, but did it ever come out onto the highway?
not that I'm aware of, it may have at some point. On the thing.
yeah, like, it's been an assumed, what we would call an assumed access for over before I had the building, as long as I can remember. I mean, so if I ever really did have to take to court, and I hate even being here because Aaron and I had such a good relationship. And I'm like, you're almost creating a problem that's not there. You know, if I go, hey, now we got, you know, all these stuff. So it's like, it's just, there's been a presumed access for ever since I can remember, which I've done some research. I got information on it. I don't know if we have an attorney present, but I'm sure there's precedence there that it's hard to take away access that's been there for a long time.
So you want to have an entrance into your building, you have to use errands? Is that what you're
There's
saying?
two right there that are split. I have parking spots right in front. There are parking spots on the side of my building that are on the property that you would have to go on Aaron's property to get onto mine. You'd have to go 10 feet on his property. But you'd also have to block the access to the alley. The only way to separate it would have literally put a fence there.
So what happens if you spend the money to put these other parking places in, assuming you're gonna use parents' property? And then it comes back at a later date and says.
They're already there. Parking spots already been there for years.
So what if he then says?
I would have to take him to court over it with I would have to take him to court over it, which I would if I had to. I don't ever see that coming because the way Aaron's parking lot comes in, his parking spots are angled the other direction. He comes in, when they come in from that short one, they park in my spots. Because otherwise they would have to go the opposite way. So we've been using each other's properties for years.
Have you talked to Aaron about?
I've talked to Aaron.
Aaron gave you something in writing to say you're.
He's not gonna do that. He's just not. I mean, that's just Aaron, it's no Aaron.
But he didn't have no problem.
He has absolutely no problem. I've talked to him several times. They had absolutely no problem with me.
It maybe you specifically said it was just while you were there, your business, you know, the change of ownership. And even if now it's open, you might lose that too, so it's something that has to be.
But like what I was thinking is it's not a problem. I mean, that between them two, they know how to work.
I don't see where you're from.
I could see being a problem if you felt the parents and then you could do my kids stuff later on. But Fortville, I'm sorry. I'm trying to talk. And I can't hear. I'm easily distracted. It's Fortville. Yeah. Our properties all run up against each other. I drove over people's properties to get in and out of my place of business and my home. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a problem.
So do we have to put, I'm not sure what the issue is. I think there's a private issue between you and your neighbor that's not anything that the town has any role in. I don't know.
I just wanted to ask.
Approval.
Well, what I had said is, so as part of this change of use permit that he submitted for, we wanted to make sure that he had adequate amount of parking for all of the various uses that he's got in the building, both existing and proposed. And so when we ran the numbers, he was short, I think, about 2 spaces. And then he subsequently said, well, I paved in the other 2 spaces. And I said, well, the only other issue I can see is that part of your parking, in addition to the access, is actually on somebody else's property. So I had told him about it earlier in the year. I said that I have something documented as a cross-access easement, the parking agreement doesn't have to be complicated. But for that very purpose, in case the property ever sells, or the uses change hands on the Napa property, what's so difficult about getting this agreement? Then he's willing to say there's precedent, legal precedent, et cetera. It's pretty simple. We're just asking for an agreement.
There are 2 more spots necessary to satisfy the development standards for parking.
Yeah, correct.
So there's
And you're saying one way to resolve that is to obtain permission from the neighbor that he's a parking agreement to satisfy that shared use to those additional spots. Can't get that, I think the only other remedy would be to go to the ZBA and ask for a variance of the development standards. And that's what I had mentioned. So it's really not a council issue. Yeah. I mean, the other thing we wanted to be careful about is, I haven't talked to Aaron about this, and so I can only go on what his word is. We don't want to run into a situation where we're approving parking on somebody else's property. So that's the only thing we want to be careful about, and it's good that they work together, but that's my take is they just need to have a basic agreement in place. To say that some of the parking is on his property, some of the access is on his property, and we don't. So it seems to me the way that this would typically play out is that there would be an application for a variance of development standards to allow these 2 additional parking spots shared, or that would be in part of that, the staff report and recommendation from the ZBA that approved, but with the condition that you get an agreement with the neighbor to use it or something to that effect. But it's really, again, it's a matter.
So none of your parking spaces are on his property, right?
That's not true, some are.
Well, of the 2 you asked me for, there was 22 extra foot that weren't weren't paved up, that weren't marked off. It was already paved. There was 22 extra foot to put in those 2 extra spots, 9 foot apiece, and then another, whatever, 5 foot left over. So, and I did tell Adam that they were marked in. I haven't paved anything. He knows I haven't paved anything. And I know you've actually gone over and talked to Aaron on it because he told me you had.
I don't remember specific.
But the point is none of the 12 spots, I have 5 in the back that are in the gravel area that are directly off the alley that I utilize. So, I mean, if you're talking about now 17 spots, yeah. Now the part of it is that to fulfill my obligation, which is what he asked for 12 spots. All 12 of those spots are on the pavement on my property. The only thing that is in question is, can I drive on down the front entry and access my parking spot? That's the only thing in question as far as the 12 spots go.
Cause he's over, like I said, they're using it now. It's like,
It's part of it though, difference of required parking for a law firm and that intensity versus. Well, he's also never, really shouldn't be so complicated. I mean, I've given you basic requirements on what we need to see in order to issue the permit. I've done this twice or 3 times already, and so it's not complicated. We need a narrative as to what it is that you're doing, which that's not clear as to what the. We need a site plan, basic sketch just showing where these spots are that you're referring to, which I've seen that yet. We need the application signed, which isn't done. So as soon as you can, either you or the tenant, you can get that information, the sooner we can get this off our plate and move on. But shy of that, no, we don't have enough. My opinion, we don't have enough information to issue that. So as soon as we get that, we can review it.
I guess my thought of it is I went through all the way the process to actually even get a state release, which if anybody's gone through a state release, it's very thorough. And I have so many emails to Adam trying to be really clear along the entire path so that when we got to this point, it wouldn't come a problem.
Well, again, I wasn't prepared for this discussion. I wasn't aware that you're in here, but I would say is that, again, as I mentioned back in March, is that parking is an issue in that you're using somebody else's property to access your parking. Now, that can be done, well, it happens, but we don't want to presume anything in terms of issuing out approval to allow trespassing on somebody else's
It's been happening for years.
Well, the problem with that scenario is that if he doesn't add on at all, he's still trespassing on his property.
Yeah, I'm already, in that, under that scenario, I would not be able to have any tenants at all. 'Cause it's,
So how's
I
that
mean,
work?
and that's the
I mean, somebody's been driving on, right?
Access from the alley.
No.
the access is from the front and the alley.
No, you would have no legal access without even to the parking on the property about half of it. So now's a good opportunity to simply get that in writing and be done with it. I confused as to why we would sign something like that. Yes, I'm not.
Just because, because Aaron doesn't feel like he has to, and Aaron's like kind of guy that. And it's an issue that really has never been an issue, so we're both, he's especially like, why does the town want me to sign off on something that I've never had to? He's leery of the town. That's a very simple explanation. He's leery of the town and what the alternative motives are. He hasn't, we have a great working relationship. But what, you know, when you start asking people to put things in legal writing and stuff that's been around forever, then people start going, red flags start going. And Adam, I have been over backwards to give you information throughout the entire process.
Well, I mean, it's
Beginning.
information is what it is.
You have a whole entire, you have the whole entire
And it has not been.
Release.
Hey,
the
Jeremy,
state release.
real quick, just make sure I understand. So, and correct me if I'm
Yes,
understanding
you're right.
correctly. So that issue here is we, option one is, it's a private issue that you
Yes.
need to get with your neighbor. And I understand that he's leery of the town and such, and, you know, okay, each their own, right?
Yes.
So that's option number one. My concern with, okay, so option number two, you're approaching the town to ask us to grant what you are requesting, which would by then, the town will be saying, okay, we're allowing your customers to drive on private property to access your parking spot. Is that what you're asking us to do?
No, I'm not asking you to, I'm asking you to not get into it. Really, it's never been an issue. I'm asking you
I understand, but,
to not make it an issue that never was an issue.
okay, so, but by expanding the parking and to approve that permit, in the town permitting process, that's where the town comes in, correct?
We're not expanding the park.
Where you're adding more spaces.
Okay, so let me make sure I understood this one part. So the extra spaces that initially were required, did I hear you say that you could go to an option would be to go to the BPA and ask for fewer parking spaces? Right? Would that alleviate, make this problem go away? If the BPA approves that? No. It's still, they're still on that. No, it's still gonna be driving on there. I'll spend the whole, all the parking.
He would drop me to five parking spots. If I can't use those parking spots inside that I've been using forever, I would now be dropped to 5 parking spots.
I understand. I've been to your property.
Yeah.
several times.
So
I
it
know
would
what you're
be-
talking about.
I mean, you're talking about making a potential huge thing out of something that's never been a thing.
Well, I think just the fact you're going to a council meeting to express those point of a lot of other topics. You're definitely making it an issue. Actually pretty-
I guess I'm coming from you because I don't feel like I can come to you, so I have to go to the board.
18 years I've been doing this.
That's pretty good. Alex, what are our options here from the town as far as the permitting process? I mean, I understand something.
I'd want to, I mean, this is the first I've ever heard of this. I'd want to look at it.
Okay. If we look at it.
Absolutely.
I'll get back with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll take a look at it.
Okay. Perfect.
Alright.
Okay. Yeah. I agree on.
All right, we're gonna jump up. The next on the council is consider, we're gonna go to old business. Since it seems like this whole thing is a little backward. Oh. Oh, you want to do that? Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind, yeah, just, I
Sorry.
know at the previous council meeting, I let everybody know that we have hired our 2 new street employees. Robinson, and Noah Nicholas. So, come up, well, Baker, you're right.
Sorry about that, yes. It's not on the page very far. We're gonna jump to old business, just to, clean up some things that probably should have been done, a month ago. The council to consider second reading of ordinance 2260, a rezone to a PUD for Ridgeview West Apartments.
All right, so for this particular item, if you recall, this came before the council, like, meeting on July 5th. And at that time, there was a typo, the clerk-treasurer was not present, so there was then a motion to table it until everybody was present. And since that time, the developer has added into the PUD the requirements that the planning committee had recommended in their positive recommendation. It should be noted that under state law, the legislative body has 90 days to act on the planning commission's recommendation, or their recommendation becomes final. Their recommendation was made in June, and so the last day to act on it, without it automatically being approved, would be September 26th. So obviously, this would be our last council meeting. If you wanted to have a special meeting, that's always an option that you have. Really beyond that, the other component that is part of this project is the tax abatement, the TIF Bond that we're looking for. And if I recall the conversation correctly, at the July 5th meeting, as a council, we wanted to see it together on the same agenda so that they could really work together in terms of the project. So with that, the developers here, as well as their team, if you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to address them. Any questions? Okay.
Principal thought for you guys, just summary of new information. It should have the term sheet that will provide the giving of notes. Hi everyone, good to see you again. I'm Kent Ritter with Hudson Investing. And yeah, then the one thing I would add to Adam's comments is we also went in front of the RDC related to the incentive financing, and they provided a note recommendation. So to bring it back here to kind of come together, I think with the community so as well. So in the presentation here, I've really just summarized a lot of what you've already seen. Happy to hit on any fine points. Happy to talk through the incentive financing. In your note that we provided for the agenda was a term sheet related to the bond. And that was kind of the amounts and things that we came together working with the towns. What we thought would work and the value, the net assessed value, we thought the property would be valued at afterwards, and use that to size everything up, and also in relation to how much financing were you required to help get the project done, just based on what we were able, as we talked with lenders, what we're able to finance the lender, and what we were able to do for private investors. Can you state just for review for anyone of the other here what your request is for that bond?
Yeah, so the request is for a $2 million bond, of which 1.7 million we anticipate actually goes to the project. The rest would go to administrative fees and capitalized interest ahead of the construction.
You're requesting 20-year bond?
A 20-year bond, yeah, down from 25 originally, we were able to pare it down. We were also able to bring the amount requested down by about half from the initial projection. That's the work. One of the things, related to the initial, if you look at, so if you look at the third slide, the second slide, related to the PUD. One of the things, as the planning commission made a positive recommendation, there were several things that we discussed. The one, in order to bring the cost down, to bring the financing down, to make it all better aligned, actually assessed for, we'd like to remove the requirement to put the siding, new siding on current Ridgeview. We're gonna do all that we can to improve that property anyway, but just, it was about $560,000, an expensive project, it really kind of played everything out of whack. If you take that out, it makes everything work related to the amount of tax revenue the property will create, and it actually leaves a little bit for the town on top, in that the way that our projections work, and it's been validated, I believe, by the town accountants who work together, that even from the first year, we believe the town will be able to receive some increment, a piece of the taxes above and beyond what's required to actually fund the bond. So that's the last page of the presentation. I've outlined over the 20 years. What we're calculating is about $831,572 above and beyond what would go to actually pay the bond. That would go to the town during that bond period, that would actually be able to fund future projects for the town. So it starts out relatively small, about $3,000 in the first year, but then by the end, it's about close to $84,000. That totals about $831,000 over the 20-year period that the bond was in. So that was one of the things that I thought was much better than the original proposal. By bringing the cost down, we were able to bring that bond payment down to the point where really the town should start to net some taxes straight from the start. So hopefully that can provide some additional value and some additional synergy to the project. Happy to dig in.
Did that include too the amount to create the new TIF? I think you said that at RDC, right?
Correct. So that's why we're asking for a $2 million bond, but thinking only about 1.7 will actually make it to the project, related to administrative fees and things to set up the TIF district and the bond.
If the AV doesn't come back on this as hope, is the developer prepared to make up the difference in what those are?
Yes. Yes, and that's why we're comfortable with kind of the balance we struck with the 20-year. I mean, I looked at doing a 15-year, it just, the math doesn't work, related to us being on the hook for that payment if that doesn't come in. And actually, in speaking with the town accountant, we originally had a higher assessed value I was projecting. And talking with the accountant and his work all over the state, we brought that down to about 105,000 per unit, which he felt was probably actually a conservative number. I think Buzz is on, so I would have to speak for him, but he couldn't speak after me. But we felt like that was a conservative number. And then we're growing that at a 2% rate, which we also felt was a fairly conservative number. So the hope would be that it actually approves for more than, or excuse me, assesses for more than that, and then potentially it grows at a higher rate. And in that, the town would net the additional benefit.
initial.
Well, hold on, we'll get to you, there'll be time for public comment. Hey, Buzz,
It's
can
not
you
a
hear us?
comment, it's a question. So we have clarity on the project and how it's funded.
Yeah, I hear you guys. Can you hear me okay?
So you were listening to what Kent was saying, everything, what you were saying. But,
Yeah, I think we did start out, I think their initial pass on the assumed net assessed value per unit was about 156,000. That seemed a little high, and I think we're in a more realistic range with the 105,000 assessment, but there's always the risk, you know, that nothing gets assessed until it's built and the assessor goes out and assesses it. So there's always going to be, you know, some risk there, and you know, it's really probably more risk for Kent and his guys than it is for the town, because the town's really not indemnifying any of the bond payments if you choose to go forward with such a, you know, with the TIF incentive.
Yeah, and we expect we to be on the hook. The difference, so we're essentially agreeing to pay a minimum payment. And the hope is that it gets assessed and the taxes can fund that minimum payment, but if not, then we'll.
any questions?
I have questions, but they're not gonna get answered tonight. I have questions regarding the financing of this. And I don't know that it was just to spend a lot of time discussing it. Buzz and I discussed it at length. I think that the break even, if you will, on this is much longer than year 3, which concerns the cost of financing is obviously increasing and will continue to, unfortunately, for everybody. You have a break even in year 3. Buzz, if you, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but when we were chatting about this, the break even on this for the developer's also asking for the bond payments rather than a split 90-10 or 80-20 or whatever was discussed, all those options. Asking for their bond payments to be paid up front and then the excess, correct, to build into the town. Right, okay, so, doing it that way, as far as, I don't know if you have your numbers in front of you, the break even on that for the bond at the rate that you had, and again, it was just an estimate, was much further out than year 3. On the
Yes.
20-year option.
Yeah, it depends on the interest rate that gets applied and when it gets applied. Those would be things that would need to be worked out in a bond purchase agreement. Where, you know, if we only have, you know, again, those are things, there's a lot of details to be worked out in a bond purchase agreement like this. And on the one hand, you know, the risk is really going to be on the developer because we're not using any of our other tax money to subsidize those bond payments. The proposal out there tonight is, you know, better for the developer in the front end because the first 5 or 6 years, you know, until the tax rolls really get established and the assessments and so forth come in and you really know where your starting point is, then they'll start trending up every year or so. You'll get a reassessment and so it was about, I think it was about 5 and again, it just depends on the assumptions you make on interest rates and when that interest starts to accrue, that you can make it come out different ways. So I don't know that, are we trying to lock in a specific term right now, Kent? Is that, or?
The request for 20 years. And Kent
Yeah.
was 15.
But I'm talking about like on the interest rate that, you know, would reasonably, you know,
No,
make cover your payments, and whether that includes capitalized interest or, you know, there's details that would need to be worked out, but I think conceptually,
Yeah.
You know,
those
the
don't-
20 years is probably the biggest term, you know, as far as the length of the TIF commitment. And then, you know, how it actually comes in after it's built and assessed is obviously going to be the other significant assumption that, you know, again, I think the developer is absorbing the risk because we're, you know, he's got to get the financing without any backup from the town other than the pledge of, you know, however you decide to split the TIF, whether it go to the bond payment first and then the town keeps what's left over, or whether there's any kind of a defined split. You know, I don't know that tonight you're ready to get into the weeds on that, but that would those would be important assumptions.
We agree. I appreciate your input, Fritz. And I guess the last thing on here that concerns me, since you mentioned it, was I just have liquidity concerns when we're not going to resize current Ridgeview and save that cash to put forward to this. That just concerns me a little bit. And that was one of the initial things that was going to be done to begin with. So those are just my initial concerns. I've got concerns about the financing. Of course, that's near and dear to me, but and Buzz is absolutely right. A lot of it's gonna be, there's variables still, there's still levers there to be pulled that could make this go different ways, so. Still a lot to do. But.
Yeah, I think it was that there is a big change with the siding, so that we've asked a big change.
Well, I don't agree with the 20-year bond either, but again, that's, I might be the minority on that. I think we've established precedent of between a 15-year bond with our other projects in town. My opinion has always been if we're going to stretch on these, I'm not a fan of, and I'm not suggesting we're just handing out tax credits. That's not what I'm saying, because there's benefits to all the abatements that we determined that need to be made, but if we're going to make further concessions on our precedents that we've been established with other entities that we've granted abatements for, I think that we should remain consistent on that, stretch out of the box for those big, you know, transformative projects. And me, I'm just one, this doesn't fit the bill for me, to make an exception of that.
Do you want me to address the TIP, what that means? Question? The question. So TIP is tax increment financing, and it's a tool that, and Buzz, jump in here and correct me if I get any of this wrong, he's the expert on this. But when property is developed, there's a new development. The increment is the amount of tax based on the increase in assessed value. So for this project, we've got basically empty land that's being assessed at probably the lowest tax rate that you can have for that property. When and if the development is built out, the assessor will come out and assign an assessed value to the new development. And then that will have taxes due on it. So the increment is the difference in the tax payments on the new development versus how the property is taxed now, which will be a pretty big delta for, going from undeveloped land to a multi-million-dollar project. So what we're talking about, and that money is property taxes, and then because it's in a TIF district, the town gets the lion's share for the term of the TIF is in place in the district of that property tax. So what the discussion about and the request is how much of that increment that comes to the town for that 20 years would be through a bond issuance afforded back to the developer to help them put this project in place. There's a lot more to it, but that's essentially the way the TIF works and what we're talking about when we're saying TIF and going around these acronyms about bonds and assessed values, whatnot. So with the project goes, it'll be assessed. The property taxes, because it goes from empty land to big new development, it's pretty sizable, will be significant. As tax dollars come to the town, and the council can choose to use some of that money or all of that money for economic development incentive.
That benefits the TIF.
Right, but we're talking about the tip, we're talking about rezone, so, we kind of.
Right, no, but
Angle
if the
it.
PUD isn't approved, then there's no project. So then, which is why, Rich, you're exactly right. It makes sense to have the old business after discussion on the abatement for the incentives.
Okay, so on this portion of it, will we wait for public comment on this one? Or wait for public comment, or will we public comment on both of these?
I think we do both, because they really are separate issues.
Okay.
And one is the PUD ordinance and whether to approve that as recommended by the planning commission. And the next is the finances of it.
Okay, thank you. Public comment on rezoning from what is it now, 3.5 to PUD? No. It was, no, it was, but I went to residential, now it's on the PUD. Any discussion, any comment from anyone?
I'm Linda Marie Hanson. I live abutting the property that's being discussed. Right now, this undeveloped land separates two chunks of neighborhood housing, which is predominantly single-family housing. I'll admit, across the street from me is a small apartment building. But even the way it's presented on the lot, it looks like an oversized house rather than rental units, but building Main Street through and going ahead with this development of multi-story apartments, the quantity of the apartments, you're completely changing the character of that entire part of town. We are quiet residential streets. And you're going to change Main Street's character up there to become a thoroughfare, which is a whole different atmosphere than quiet neighborhood streets. And you're going to throw in apartments with a congestion of people. 80 units, am I correct? 40 on each side of the street. That could amount to 100 cars a day running up and down Main Street, 125 cars if they've got teenagers. You don't know who's going to move in. But it isn't only going to be a single adult or an adult couple. It's going to be families. There's no family atmosphere even planned in that apartment area. There's no playground, there's no dog and poop yard. But mostly no playground tells me where their kids going to play in the street, which is right now where our kids play, and they play in our alleys. And we're very fearful that the traffic will consist of agitated motorists waiting because they cannot get onto or beyond Michigan Street. It will serve as a barrier. They won't have, what do you call it? Public access, egress. The town at least has to put up a four-way stop, or those people are going to be piled up beside my house, just tooting their horns and getting angrier and angrier, waiting for their chance to get out on Michigan. There's enough steady traffic on Michigan all day long that, especially at that daddy go to work time in the morning, and I'm not belittling any women who go to work. This is what I call that. That's when you see the most congestion. Coming home from work in the evening, everybody seems to ditch work at a different time, so you don't really see a big parade of cars coming home. But I am concerned for the traffic. I'm concerned for the congestion. I'm extremely concerned for the total change in character. This will not just encumber the town of Fortville for these TIF dollars and waiting patiently for 20 years to finally see some money off this project. By then the apartments will be crappy and falling apart. But it also obligates the town to fix all the sidewalks, fix Main Street. Main Street has variable widths, not up there in Timber Ridge, but on my one little block, it has various widths. Some homeowners park on Main Street. We have one homeowner who parks on Main Street because she must. She has no driveway, she has no garage, that's it. So if it becomes a major thoroughfare and no parking or only on one side kind of parking, it really can be even more of a issue for our neighborhood. I think I said enough. Someone else.
Public comment?
Lynn Smith, they go to North Main, and my husband and I are original owners. We moved in the week before our middle child was born. That's probably the biggest concern that I agree with, is that it's been totally changed the character of the neighborhood. I understand that people need to make money and they have a right to engage in the business activities in which they choose. But I've heard it said that it will not change the character, that it fits right in with what's there. And I don't think those statements are true. I think there's in favor of the developer, and just like my comments are going to be skewed in favor of my community. That's the biggest thing. I love Fortville. We've raised our children here. I don't want our little one horse town to change. Understand things happen, life moves on, things happen. But change for the sake of change just isn't a good idea. I just love our local, and I don't think this 15 years away. Hi, I'm Cindy Phelps. I live at 45 North Main Street. I've been there about 30 years now. We too raised our child there on the dead end street. Watched him ride his bike up and down and play and have good fun. We've got new generation now. We've got family kids out there playing and having a good time on their bike. We have animals out there. We have cats. And some of the things that I've noticed, that sitting in my garage watching my little private Idaho there, I watch traffic go up and down Michigan, driving 90 to nothing. I don't want that in my little dead end street. I don't want police coming up and down there. They're already down School Street all the time. They're all down School Street because of ODs and all different kinds of things for that same apartment complex that you have already there. I don't want the traffic, and I don't want the crime. I don't want a bunch more crime going there. I don't want 500 cars going down there. And Linda, you're right. People get anxious when they're driving. You're going to have to do more than just a four-way stop there. That's going to have to become a stop sign. I don't want that in my neighborhood. I just don't want it. And I don't want my home value to decrease because these apartments in here and they decrease everything. That's all I have to say.
Hi, I'm Mike Horton. I live at 101 East Michigan. I've been a part of this community for about 20 years now, and my wife's been here even longer. To say it won't change the nature of the neighborhood is just not correct. Anybody in the right mind to sit there, look me in the eyes, and honestly say that won't change the nature of our neighborhood. It will not. And not for the good. Change is coming. We're going to grow. That's just the nature of where we are at as a community. So I'm not anti-growth. It's going to happen. We're part of that donut that's still kind of a little bit open around Indianapolis. So it's going to happen. I don't want to become fishers, okay? But in the same token, I think you got to have controlled growth. I think you have to have smart growth.
I don't think you want to injure the people that have lived here and been a part of this community for a long time in order to make somebody's profit. And let's face it, this is about profit. That's why you build it. Without that home, it's about profit. And if we lose sight of that, then we're losing sight of the people who've been here a long time, who care about the community, who support the community, and will continue to do so. But, you know, I too, I fear for the traffic, I fear for the kids in my neighborhood, who have, you know, no place to play other than the streets and the alleys and so forth. And we watch each other, we're good neighbors, you know, we know each other and we support that. And you're going to design a situation that you allow this to happen where it's barely a profit. Okay? And if there's a need for apartments, there's plenty of room around the town of Fortville in order to establish those. It doesn't tear up a neighborhood. So I'm asking here, pleading with you here, as somebody who believes in neighborhoods. I believe that's what makes Fortville unique. I grew up in a small town, and believe me, a lot of this area doesn't have that uniqueness anymore. And for us to continue to have people who are supportive of our local government, supportive of our community, who care about each other, who watch out for each other, we need neighborhood communities, not apartment houses. So thank you.
Jerry Lambert, we own property at 706 North Main Street, and this is smack dab next to the apartments, which I want to say 3-story apartments and 2-story apartments. So our house or our property line is like 10 feet from the commercial parking lot with commercial lights, way up in the air from everything else, you know, as far as height. I spoke before, and I don't want to repeat myself. I think what I said. But what I do want to give is new information. We've been working since we last saw you, and we've had 2 big worker bees, Deb Dickerson and Rose Toomey over here. They live in Timber Ridge, and they've gone house to house. And we have a petition against the apartment building or the zoning change and the tax. We have 214 signatures.
I'll sign it.
Oh, 250. So, at last meeting, there was a comment, hey, you need more people here and maybe a petition with a bunch of signatures. Well, we have more people here and we have 200 and I could have more, 15 or 16 signatures. The residents don't want a 3-story apartment. This is single family homes. Build single family homes there. I think David Weekly would be wonderful if someone can approach him and put in his kind of historic yet more updated home. Something like that would be beautiful going up the street. But from downtown Fortville, you've got the historic homes going up Main, and then you've got the suburban homes in Ridgeview. They're all single family. It's not the 3-story is not going to work. So I want to submit this. Do I see?
The other names.
The other name, no.
Oh, okay. Maybe we'll put it here. I'll get more. Okay.
People didn't know.
Okay, here's on the last page, there's room. Last page, so sign on the last page. Anyway, I think I said everything before. And I hope you don't make this, Fishersville. And that when you do make the change or build apartments, it's in the right location. I mean, I think, you know, this would be good in another place in Fortville. So just like the man before said, just do smart, right?
My name is Nick Sarter. I live at 109 West Carolina Street. I will be probably the first and maybe only one besides the developer here to say that I want the street to go through. I walked here this evening. I had to walk across somebody's private driveway to do that. I would love to be able to walk down Main Street here and down to Libby, your ice cream store, to Denver's. We go to Fox Garden about every week. Being able to walk there without having to go all the way to Leland or to trespass would be wonderful. I don't want to do it at the expense of what is effectively the tallest building in Fortville in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It doesn't make sense. We need more housing. He wants to make money. Great. Everybody wants money. People need houses. That's fine, I get it. But again, please don't do it at the expense of the tallest building in Fortville in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Lastly, you guys are elected officials as county council members. And your job as county council members is to represent the people of the town as an elected official. So I really hope you remember that when you're making your decision. You are an elected official and a representative of all of us. And you've not heard yet one argument.
If I could just add one more thing. How many of you in here are in protest of the zoning change? Because we need the town council to not sit there and assume because you don't talk that you're all for it. They need to see. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Heather Lloyd. I did not come here to speak originally. My parents actually built Ridgeview Apartments. I grew up in the house on Merrill Street. I know the struggles that my parents went through to build the apartments. They didn't get all the tax abatements. They didn't get all of the benefits that this company is asking for. They had to work their butt off and work with the town to try to make it better. Their vision was never to build tons of apartments. They had bought that other 4 acres that they were looking to build on for the option of potentially building at a future time. That never happened. They were against putting in Main Street 100% because they knew that there is nowhere for the kids in the apartments to play. And a majority of those apartments have children between 1 and 3 when my parents owned it, because I did all the finances for them. So I'm very familiar with this. The kids play in that area. We actually live on the dead end of Main Street now, so we didn't move far. Our children play on the dead end. All of the families around there know each other. They know to look out for the kids, whether it be on the alley or on the dead end. And I know it's the same on the Timber Ridge side as well. So I understand that there's an issue that maybe people don't want to walk around. Or if you want to put in a trail so that people can walk from Timber Ridge to Main Street. Because my husband and I walk downtown all the time. We take our kids to Libby's. We go to the Mexican restaurant. But there are ways around that without opening that up for all the traffic. Because you're not just going to get the traffic that is going into these apartments, you are going to get all of the traffic for people that are going into Timber Ridge, that are trying to cut over to 13. And there used to be a 4-way stop at Michigan and Maine, and that was taken out, and there have been accidents, and there have been people who stop there and don't realize that it's a 2-way stop and cause other accidents and issues in that area. So by increasing the traffic, by adding 80 more apartments plus businesses or whatever that is going in there, just going to cause more issues than the benefit of it.
Well, first of all, ditto to everything that's been said so far. If I understand, sorry, my name is Bill Lambert, and we're the owners of the property at 906 North Main. As I understand, the PD that was approved by the planning commission, it was approved conditioned upon fiber cement siding the existing Ridgeview apartments. And it was mentioned here that you are going to approve it as approved by the planning commission. Well, he's asking that condition be deleted. So that's not as the planning commission approved it.
That's a $500,000 modification that's being asked for here. And so I guess maybe it's a question, doesn't this have to go back to the planning commission to see if they would even approve it without that? That's a big deal because those apartments with the siding they've got now, this would have been a huge improvement. And we would, if there are ever going to be apartments going in there, we would like to see them, you know, something that goes with the neighborhood, not 3-story buildings. But the siding that's there now is pretty awful. So I'm just wondering, I guess this is the council. I mean, that's a big change.
Rosumi, 102 West Delaware Street, Timber Ridge, on the corner of Main and Delaware. Of course, I'm against all the traffic and everything that they said I'm against, but I also want to question character. As we went around and took signatures around the neighborhood, some of the horror stories I hear about Ridgeview Apartments from the people that live there, where I was hoping that someone would come from there tonight. As the developer said, they're putting in washer and dryers and doing all this. But what he's not saying is he raised everybody's rent and told them if they have their own washer and dryer, they have to get rid of it and they can't store it on the property. And they have to pay him a monthly fee to use the ones to put in. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't jive with that. So I'm wondering about parents. So if these people are getting $200 and $450 a month, they have to pay more because they're paying for what you do. So they don't have that money. They're telling me that they don't have it. They don't know what they're going to do. So anyway, that's all. Thank you. Thank you. Delaware Street in the cul-de-sac, and it's a quiet neighborhood. I purchased that home in 21 years. In December, I decided to buy that house when the towers were falling. September of 1991. I'm a social worker. I was trained at the school of social work, and I think it's a matter of dealing with the reality of the entire plan. There's 2 apartment complexes being built right now over by CVS on Highway 13. I don't know how that's going to impact the traffic flow, but opening up Main Street and having people cut through down Delaware or Carolina and avoiding the stoplight, because we know when the county came in and widened the roads and put new sidewalks in, it took forever. We were all inconvenienced. And they agreed that it was mismanaged plan. They had to come in and reroute the roads and change it because it wasn't safe for turning. And there's a bottleneck now. So we already have a traffic problem that hasn't even unfolded. And we want to add another 80 apartments between our neighborhoods behind Carolina and have additional traffic. You know, they sell Fishers as being the #1 city in the country, but it's a phony sales program because there's a bottleneck on 69. You can't get out. My husband works at Community North. He won't even get on the interstate because he'll be 2 hours late if there's an accident. And they also sell the marketing for Fortville years ago, and it was a joke. It's for Fortville guys now. And I wondered, well, how is our atmosphere going to change? How is our small town atmosphere going to change? And it looks like that the power, money, and greed has enveloped some individuals, and they haven't looked at the established neighbors who have been here for years. I've been here 21 years, and I moved in the district because my daughter was a teacher, phys ed teacher at the middle school with Mr. Davis. And I wanted to live in the district so I could pay taxes and support a salary. And we know that The school was even mismanaged because the school was bankrupt because of politics, and the guy they had as a superintendent that had bankrupted a former, but we won't get into that. But anyway, I like my neighborhood because the lots are larger. I'm a gardener, that's my sin. I bought the home from, she was a landscape artist. And I have all these flowers and I like the solitude of the quiet. I don't want to wake up to machines running, machines beeping from noon till night. And I talked to Sean Simmons, who lives across the street. He used to be the Fortville town president. And I don't know if the word is hit the street, but he's thinking about running for office again, and I will vote for him. So anyway, he wouldn't make a commitment for again, but he said that they looked at using that property. You know, there's a shortage of housing for 55 and older. I don't know why they couldn't put like maybe 7 or 8 duplexes, and older people drive differently than younger families with teenagers. And I don't think we'd have them racing through our neighborhood down Delaware or down South Carolina, because what is really nice about living in Fortville in the cul-de-sac at the end of the block is we don't have the noise, we don't have the pollution. And I talked to Sean and he said with the supply limitations and getting things delivered, it's going to be over 3 years to get it even up and running with the delays. And we're going to hear the machines. And we've been through it with the sidewalks in the county. It took them forever to do the sidewalks in the mud holes. And it's like, when is it going to be done? And then they had to come back and redo it. And then I'm hearing that the financing is in place. So what is it going to cost us as taxpayers? You know, there's other priorities in town. You know, I look at the Greenfield Library that caters to the educational opportunities for adults and children. And I look at our library and it sits empty and nobody even cares about it. And we have underprivileged children here and nobody seems to care. But let's put another 3-story apartment complex in and just overlook that. So I think our priorities are skewed. But my number one concern is, as I aged in place here, is I like the quiet solitude. I don't want to listen to trucks coming up and down the street, the dump trucks ruining our streets. How are they going to come in with their equipment and their deliveries? Are they going to come down our streets and ruin our streets? Are they going to come down next to the apartment complex where the owner lives and use the county road to access? And why don't they open that up and let that be a one-way street out to feed into the highway so they can leave the apartment complex? We haven't heard anything about how the traffic flow is going to be. And it's going to be a bottleneck. And we've got kids at 7 o'clock in the dark waiting at the corner where Rose lives. And we've got people going to work in the dark and coming around the corner. The kids don't have to worry about traffic flow or speeders or the traffic jams or bumper to bumper traffic right now. But we will when we have 80 apartments and people coming and going and avoiding the light on 67, cutting through the neighborhood. And then they're in a hurry because they're running late. And there's a line of traffic. We have to worry about our kids and their safety. You know, there are a lot of things that go into this planning, and I don't think everything's been thought through. And I think you need to think about the traffic flow number 1, because it's going to be a bottleneck. We've got 2 apartments going in, catering to different levels of incomes and people. And I don't think we need that kind of 3-level. I drove through the apartment complex to count the number of cars that were in the Ridgeview or the apartment complex. There were 50 cars. I don't know if somebody was working, but we had another 70 or 80 cars, and they're going to exit through the Timber Ridge neighborhood. And we've got buses that got to get to school on time, and our schools are already taxed, and we'd like to have to take the teacher to student ratio low, because our standards are excellent at the Mount Vernon School Corporation, and we're known for winning awards. And I see the families moving in, and we've got to pay more bus drivers. We're going to have more traffic jams with the buses stopping and people are behind them in the morning. So I don't think the reality of what is entailed in the detail and how it affects the life of not only people who have lived and invested their lives in their homes in Timber Ridge and the surrounding area. And our home is a sanctity. It's a sacred place. I've been here for 21 years and I babysat my children, my grandchildren, and they've grown up, and my daughter will retire from the school corporation. And I don't want the quiet solitude. I don't want the air pollution. I don't want the noise pollution. I don't want the solitude disrupted. And I think it's something that you haven't taken into consideration. And then I hear someone say, okay, we had this proposal to pay for the siding, but we don't want to do it that way now because we can't afford it. If you can't afford it, don't start it, because I don't want to get stuck with the bill.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So, I went around and got signatures in addition to Rose and I are social workers, so we're we know how to speak up and fight for what we believe in. But anyway, I knocked on the door of a resident and she said, I moved out of Fishers in Timber Ridge because I like the big lot. I like the solitude. I don't want the traffic jam. I'm sure she signed the petition. There's some people that are the original owners. Lynn just spoke. She's an original owner. We don't need a 3-level. I wonder if they're even gonna get them all rented. Who's gonna walk up 3 levels? I mean, they got 2 levels now and they're not full.
Yeah, you're probably done.
So anyway. And I'm upset also because in the School of Social Work, we don't look for what's happening. We look for, please hear what I'm not saying. And to pop in to our neighborhood and tell 2 or 3 residents within feet of where the complex is gonna be and not make a major announcement because you're proud of the project and you know it's gonna benefit the town, and give a little blurb to a few neighbors and say this is what we're gonna do and nobody really knows. That's lying by omission. And it seems secretive and underhanded. And I don't like that, because I have a motto, and I'm from South Bend, I was born under the golden rule of Notre Dame. And I follow the golden rule, do unto others as if you were others. And that hung on my desk. And I think you need to respect the residents that have been here, invested their lives, and have the safety of their grandchildren. There's parents that ride their bikes nightly. And if we have a bottleneck coming home and leaving in the morning, the whole dimension of our neighborhood changes. I don't want to be smelling gas fumes. I don't want to be hearing machinery for 3 years.
Look, I get it, but you're losing them. Please, sit down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You shut up.
No,
I have the right to speak. We
You
were
do.
disrupted when the meeting
let's be
started
careful.
by somebody
You
who
do.
wasn't
I
on the
think
agenda.
Thank you.
So anyway, I have the right to speak and you don't have the right to tell me to be quiet.
Any other discussion? Jason?
I'm Jason Stein. I'm with the PUD. This was actually one of the first things that I voted on once I was appointed. You're the council, you're voted in, we're appointed in, the authority rests with you. I know that we made the recommendations based on some of the things that were said here. One of the biggest ones being the incentive to fix up the original apartment complexes, and I know that's now been requested that it be removed to help balance the numbers. I just hope you'll take that into consideration, because I know that was something we took into consideration. Thank you.
Alex, do we need to send it back since change the? Oh, we can't do it.
You'll run out of time.
Okay.
Excuse me, do we need the rest of us to come up and speak opposed, or is it necessary?
I
No, not at all. Okay.
I think we heard it now.
No, you haven't.
We need to make a motion on it. So we can, well, Alex can take the options better than I can. But we need to take a motion one way or the other this evening because Adam and Alex, we're up to the time.
Well, the way that Chase explained it, that was their biggest part of granting the PUD was deciding.
I won't say something about that, because I don't think it should go to that first place, because that project has nothing to do with this project, right? I don't think that was fair. They offered it up because they recommended it, so they offered it up, but I don't think that was in their original plan anyway. But it's not part of this project. I mean, you take something and you contingency on something else for a project, I don't think that's right.
If it's in the, PUD, it's now part of the project. If it's in the PUD, that's the
That
next part of the project.
Ridgeview is not in this PUD.
But if a siding, adding on the siding is, then it is. It is. If it's in there, then it's gonna be required.
The plan commissions is like.
This is a legislative, so it's council.
Well, you guys know where I stand on this, I've voiced my concerns, but just, these can be accepted across the board. They can be line itemed out, so the council can act on it totally on its own, right? As far as the plan commission's recommendation.
You can approve exactly what the plan commission sent to you. You can also impose your own commitments and conditions on it, or you can reject it. Or take no action.
But why would it go to recommendation if one of the things went on there? Well, that's later on, we could change all that.
You want to let the petitioner respond to that?
Yeah, please. I think there's
Yeah, so there's a lot to absorb there. Let me, what's the siding piece? We can talk about that because, so that was something that, honestly, I think we actually brought up at first. I don't think it was actually something that committee said we need to do. Like if we, something that we had thought we could do. I think it's important to point out that there's currently vinyl siding on Ridgeview Apartments, which is the same vinyl siding as on most of the houses that surround Ridgeview Apartments. So there's no difference. So our intent was to try to, because we knew that that vinyl siding doesn't fit town standards, our intent originally was to try to improve Ridgeview as part of this. Well, what's happened since then, right? Inflation has gone through the roof, the cost has gone through the roof, a lot of things have gone through the roof. And our original ask of the town for help was going to be double what we asked. And so by getting rid of that, which on his right doesn't go ahead into the building, the actual buildings, we were able to reduce the ask of the town by I think more than $1 million because we were able to take that out. Now we still have a budget allocated to improve Ridgeview Apartments, putting a lot of money into the apartments. We heard things about an increase. The rent is increasing all of the part of the inflation is going on. Materials and labor are also increasing everywhere. But that's just something I think is important to know. I mean, the houses around it largely are vinyl siding. It really does fit in with what's there. We were attempting to do it, but I think we actually brought it up first. And it's just something that with the current numbers, it's just something that we couldn't. We attempted to. We asked the town what frankly. Make this work. So we thought that. I mean, to get a lot of things done in life, you have to compromise, right? They're all compromise every day. Compromise was if we can take that out, we can remove the ask of the town down to the point where I truly believe the town will be getting taxes into the TIF bond. from year three, it's gonna be utility, it's gonna be great. Once it's built, right? Even the guy on the TV said that was the case. I mean, that.
Wait a minute, he's talking, you have time to talk for a minute.
Just related to, I guess, school districts, I mean, I know you guys have great schools, I think more children should have access to schools. I think putting apartments here allows more children access to those schools. I know Mount Vernon schools are also going through a lot of expansion, I know they're planning for the growth that's coming to this area, it's not just Fortville. Every town, Fortville's growing like crazy, right? So I know that they plan for it, I think kids should have access to those great schools. And I wanted to address communication, because I didn't want anybody to think we're doing this behind the scenes. We sent letters out, as is required, as you put in a DVD, and we also put an article or an ad in the paper.
Because everybody reads the paper.
Go ahead, wait a minute, talk, Dave.
So those are just a few things to address, but,
I'll add just a couple of points again. Have discussion about what your job is here tonight. And your job is to pay reasonable regards to 5 statutory factors. And I think that that's important to remember. That's what guides your decision. The developer here is being asked to install a public street that bisects their property as part of this development. I think if you ask the developer, I'll say on his behalf, that would not be his first choice, but that's been part of the discussion that's occurred from day one on this project, the inclusion of the extension throughout this project. So you're hearing traffic concerns, you're hearing a lot of those things. And frankly, the number of cars may change a little bit between multifamily and single family, that's not disputed. But the connectivity is part of the plan that the town has, part of the anticipated growth of the town. So we've heard a lot of discussion about traffic concerns. Number of cars aside, connectivity is something that various bodies have made a decision over the years. Part of your picture. So that may timing of it could change depending on this project approval or not approval. But I think that that's important to remember. That's not a function of the desires of this development. That's a function of the request, the requirements, and the future planning that the town. So I do think that's important. There's a lot of discussion about, well, this is a great project, just put it over there. If I had it out for every time I heard about a great project, to put it somewhere else, my 15 years of practice, I could stop practicing. That is a very natural reaction, not diminishing the reaction, it's a very natural reaction. But it is a reaction that doesn't necessarily match up with the realities of what you're facing. Not every, first of all, there's not a lot of 4-acre, 5-acre parcels available within town boundaries. You were bounded on the north by the St. Paul County line that impacts some of your opportunities. This is a uniquely situated development. We think it's important that you pay regard to that, reasonable regard, and then your statutory, your obligation. As it relates, you have good attorney, give good advice about how to move forward, about the reasonable proposed conditions. That is, I'll tell you, I think that's something that's a last resort. The things that go through and talking about making changes. And this was the item that could fit in parameters given. What's functioning. You have financial advisors give great advice. I'll tell you to have level debt payment. Is actually, my perspective, later on is a win to the town. That gives you known as an increment continues to grow. That gives you a win that sometimes on Fort Harrison we used to bid for Grand County. We have splits, so everybody shares in the win, not just one side. I think that's a difference, and that's a gift. I think that's a gift. Side in the out here, not up front, but in the out here, certainly is. And I'll tell you, I live in one of the David Weekly homes. Somebody referenced the density there. I have 7 feet in my neighborhood. That's what you have in those homes in order to make those projects work. So I live in a community that has 60 homes.
less than 6 acres. So you can fit a lot of single family homes, as I specifically mentioned here tonight, on a parcel like this, that have the same traffic impacts. essentially. I believe that this developer, this proposal does meet the 5 statutory criteria and would respectfully request the removal of the condition to include fiber cement habit.
I have a question. Who owns that property right now?
I do.
We do?
Sherry Lambert again. Being at these hearings, it's been promises with this developer, and they are already being reneged on and haven't even been built. You know, he had all the financing was all set, no, now he needs money. And now you're not gonna get your money that you thought you were gonna get out of it. But also, you know, excited. And then also there's been this big thing about how he did all this landscaping at the current Ridgeview. And I had drove through there in the summer after this was said, and there was nothing new for landscaping. I was like, wait a minute, I don't get it. There's very little, there's not one flower anywhere in that apartment complex. And there are a few bushes, only a few. It's mainly just not landscaped. And then there are tall trees that have been there forever that, I don't know, maybe they were trimmed, but I didn't understand the promise about all the landscaping that wasn't there. So I'm hearing promises that are already not fulfilled. So I'd be careful.
I'm always going to make something. Nobody's gonna like it, I'm sure, but, you have to also think about the property owners side of this too. I mean, they have a right to sell their property, and I probably wouldn't be so much for the project if there wasn't already apartments lining that whole subdivision. And they are, just, there's a few city blocks there that there's no apartments, but if you look all the way down the edge of Timber Ridge, there's a lot of apartment complexes down there. The majority of our apartments sit along that line. There is one apartment building that's being built right now out by CVS, not two. The senior living piece did not pass, so there's only one building that's being built there. There is a need for this, and that's another reason why I'm not against it, because they have a waiting list now for people. And I also know people that can't come here because there's nowhere to go. That are actually from this town, not coming from Fishers or anywhere else. So you have to look at the practicality of it too. I understand that nobody likes change and nobody wants to give up their dead end street that they use, and I understand all that, but it's not practical and it doesn't. That road was always meant to be gone through. Main Street is Main Street. Main Street is not just houses, it's also business. It's not, it is, it's a mix. Main Street's mixed right now. It always has been. And it's not the only 3-story building there on Main Street. There's already a 3-story building on Main Street.
In town,
Yeah.
in downtown, Fortville, not any residential neighborhood.
Exactly. Well, that's what I said. That's all mixed use in there anyway. We have residentials that are,
I think you're fooling yourself.
you have a house right next to that 3-story building.
Is that why you moved out to Carolina, so you wouldn't have to be around this?
I live on Carolina. I live on New York. And no, I live right across from the railroad tracks.
You said property owners count. You said that a minute ago about property owners have rights to,
Yeah.
well, I'm a property owner and I have a right. And I don't,
Let the lady speak.
But realize this too, I built my home in Timber Ridge. I built it there, and those apartments were already there, and many of the others. And I didn't have a problem with that. But I look at things differently, obviously, than you. I look at the facts. You know, it's not an emotional decision, it's about the facts. There's nothing, the building that they're gonna build is nice. It doesn't look like Ridgeview. It's a beautiful, it's a beautiful piece. So if it wasn't anything like that, I probably would have, if that apartment building was sitting there, I'd probably feel different about it. But there is already a complex there. So it doesn't change the use of the area. It's still the same.
Of all those apartments that are there that are existing that you speak of, not one of those apartments empties directly into the neighborhood.
Or it's three-story
Or
stall.
three-story, well, it could.
You can't
But
see
it
them
doesn't-
at all.
The dead end is there. I mean,
Exactly.
he could opt to open that up and have it open anyway. It's just right to be a apartment there though. Pardon me?
With the apartments there though, the, you want me to go up there?
No, no.
What we're trying to say is we understand what you're saying and there are apartments there and those apartments look really nice right now because they're not built. But so did the ones on 6 or 13, so did Ridge, all of them. Really, really nice until made all people several years, all that stuff. And you did live in Timber Ridge, you built your house there, those apartments were existing, that's great. But you didn't want anything there when you did. And then now you moved out of the neighborhood and now you're for it.
No, I didn't have no problem with it when I lived there.
That's a lie.
Yeah, well, that's where I lied. I moved out because I moved next to my parents to take care of my dad.
Nobody said you moved out because of them.
Pardon me?
Nobody said you moved out because of them.
Yeah.
You can't sit there and tell us that you very likely didn't want those, that you wanted those built when you lived there. You said, yes, I want those apartments built. They're also not 3 stories tall.
Yeah, I just don't have a problem.
I understand.
I understand your.
But I think you're doing a lot of mental gymnastics to get there.
No. Okay, well, I just wanted, was my opinion.
Sure.
You know, I'm gonna have comments. You don't have any comments?
I do, but I'm right here.
So several of these I've already mentioned before. Number one, I do have, I can't support, I still don't support the change of this PUD to the current request of the PUD. But first off, there's a couple of regrets I will have if this does not go through. Number one, there is a need for apartments in Fortville. There's a great need for apartments in Fortville. Okay, and so these would even be market rate apartments, which is everything that we want. I think the buildings look nice. I think the design looks good. So that is a regret if this doesn't go through with mine, because we do need to add to that availability of that stock. And these would be good ones. Two is to the owners, that they have the right to time this point to sell at whatever price point they want, as any of us would want to do. But that's one of the expectations and responsibilities of the advisory boards that we have in town, as far as the vision for the town and the proper usage of those bodies at the time. I said at the last meeting where this came up, I think that the vision is single-family homes. Extend Main Street, make it single-family homes to fit the area. I differed greatly on that one point that Tanya mentioned, and she said that she would probably feel differently if those apartments weren't already there currently. I feel exactly the opposite. I thought that those current Ridgeview apartments were spot zones to begin with when they went in there. I don't think they are a good fit even where they are, but they're already there, that can't be changed. Why would I want to extend, that they only fit to the area, like some of these comments I've heard, if you're using the current Ridgeview as your example? Why would I want to extend the current Ridgeview that I don't agree with being there already to make it different, even though the buildings would look good? I have no problem with the way the buildings look. I just don't think they fit where that is, and where Main Street would go through. Single family homes, which I understand the developer has 3 buildings. I would agree with that. And again, I agree with the attorney, the dollar for don't put it here, put it somewhere else. I think it's a little bit different. Maybe not from your perspective, but I understand that not in my backyard here, right? I can see these apartments where they would be right out my front door from my front. And if they end up getting built, that won't be a concern of mine as to what they look like. It's what the character of the area, and I've heard so many people say before. I just think that there would be another place with dollars spent that these would be much better utilized. We rejected another plan on Main Street. I mentioned it before, for reasons not being considered here. Similar looking building, even commercial possibilities right on Broadway, and it got rejected. And this is the type of building that will go right there, not in this nice 4-acre grass, should be an extension of single family homes, in my opinion. I've already mentioned my liquidity concerns at the expense of the current Ridgeview. And I've heard a couple of times, the developer mentioned that you reduced your ask of over $1 million multiple times. Which I can appreciate that, obviously, I'm sure, again, the residents of Fortville, but that still doesn't make it, we always ask high and expect to be settled somewhere low. But while I can appreciate that, it still needs to be right for the area and right for the town. And, you know, again, maybe in a different area, it would make a little more sense, but not here. And I think that's it. That's it, that's all I got.
I also want to say too, that I too would like to see David Weekly come in there and build a development in that property, but realistically, that will never happen because the developer cannot get their money back on property like that. You can't make it happen if they're not willing to spend that kind of money. In order for that property owner to get the price that he wants to get out of the land, this is the kind of deal that he has to make to get his money. But developers will not come in and spend that kind of money on 6 homes. They won't do that and put a road in. That's all expenses that they won't take. And if they do, they'll have to price the houses so high that nobody can afford them. So it's, you know, it really comes down to who's selling the property and what really gets in there, because most developers will not spend that. And I think you can, you know, that's one of the things that happen in development. You know, we want a certain thing, but you can't attract a person to come in there and do that if it's not financially beneficial to them. And yes, it is about money on that point, but for us, it's not about money, it's about need for the town. I mean, it's not about us making more tax money, it's nothing, and it's especially not for me. If there's a need here that needs to be satisfied.
So what price range are these going to be rented out to? Are these low income families?
No, market rate.
Market rate. What's
Which
that
doesn't
mean?
anywhere from 12 to 2,000. Yeah, $1,200 to $1,800 a month for those apartments. And there are 2 3-bedroom homes too.
Respectfully, Ms. Davis, the last time you made comments at a meeting, you said you were voting for it for the money. That's what you said.
No.
Yeah, because I was shocked.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, I was so glad you were honest, but I was also like, oh my.
Well, some of the money is a benefit.
Yes, I understand that. We do, that town does need to get some money, but I don't think, first of all, the tax abatement is really reducing what money you're gonna get. And also, if it's not a, you know, I mean, come on.
But we're telling that there is a need for apartments in Fortville.
I understand that,
And,
but not a single family home.
the other argument that, a lot of people is this, and that, you know, we get if all day long about traffic problems or kids getting. The same arguments.
Yeah.
In there. So what we have to just look is the merit of the project. There is no project saying anything about housing. Nobody's came to us about a housing project or even making Main Street housing on the side. So we can't even go down that road. That's a big idea that might not ever happen.
I mean, it's all about how much the owner is gonna sell the land for, right? I mean, he has control about that. Maybe it's not worth what he's trying to get for it.
Right.
And a house, a developer's houses,
Well, that's still not.
I mean, that's not our concern, is how much money he's gonna make. Maybe, yes, maybe it's not.
Buy it?
But you know,
Turns into a dog park.
Like your dogs run on it.
Don't put Main Street. Let's stop, hey, let's stay with the merits of the project, okay? And we can say, what if, you know, this going up and down, okay? What we're doing is just what's being presented to us as a project, okay? The only person. Yeah, go ahead.
So there was a comment about the apartments and that we know that people are coming into town and it should just be someplace else. We've already talked about all the things, but I hate that people can't move to our community because our product we have right now is subpar. If you wanted to go rent anything in Fortville, it's been called murder houses, from people that I know. They're like, how many people died in this house? They're scary. Why? I just feel like it's so nice to have an opportunity, to have a home for our new teachers, for our young professionals and young families, to have a beautiful home to live and rent, because not everybody can buy, right? So that's one thing I like about this project. Another thing I like about the project and where it is, in theory, is that people get a live around people like you. We are good neighbors. We're not seeing it today because we're yelling at each other and we're arguing about our opinions. But why wouldn't we want to share our passion and our love for our community with new people that are going to move into town? Just to assume that they're going to drive fast, do drugs, and tear up everything is unfair. I'm new to this town and I had a hard time fitting in, and people didn't accept me because I wasn't born here. So I think it's unfair to make all those assumptions. And I'm also very impressed that you guys can remember what people say in our meeting, because I can't remember anything like 10 minutes ago. So I don't know, is that a true statement that someone said that apartments decrease home values around it? They do. I don't know that. It could be a fact.
I don't think that's a fact. It's gotten more expensive.
Could be barn.
One thing for you to consider on the, you were saying that some people need to rent, but they can't afford to buy. If you can afford to pay $1,200 to $1,800.
Now, I can agree with you on that, but I also do know people that have had financial issues in the past and they cannot afford to buy. So their only option is to rent.
And I get that, but there are, I mean, it's not only Fortville. I don't know if you have listened to the news lately, but it's a nationwide crisis that people don't have houses. That's why the houses in Timber Ridge, that's why the houses all over the place that were selling for $130,000 not 5 years ago are now selling for 200 and some thousand. People are buying these homes sight unseen, no inspection, no anything. It's not only Fortville, it's everywhere. And not everywhere is going through and looking to build a high-rise thing. And we don't, Fortville cannot, they cannot support the infrastructure for what needs to happen with that. You should know that, being where you're at. We've been to your pizza place many times. We enjoy going in there. But the parking in that, you've got that nice lot around the back. If you didn't have that, you know, your business would hurt great.
Well, I would have never built a business in the first place.
Right.
At all.
But I just don't, you know, Fortville you used to be able to drive through town on any given day. I like kind of the direction of where we went so far. The thing that makes me sad is that we used to have a lot of the locals come in on Wednesday night to do the car show. Now you don't have room for that. And you've got the businesses through there and it's kind of like, well, okay, I can see that. But to a thing, we're losing our small town mentality. And I mean, I've been here since the late 90s, grew up in Pendleton. I've been a neighbor of yours. I believe you used to live on Almond Drive, if I remember correctly. I was a neighbor of yours for several years. So I've been around, I know some of these people. And I just I don't agree. I don't think we can support it. And in our neighborhood, Timber Ridge, some of the things that they've come in and tried to do, they've had to have concrete trucks come in. Concrete trucks can't make the nice tight turns in the cul-de-sac. So what do? Up on the sidewalks. I had a neighbor across the street, wife was out walking the dog. Face plant, broken nose. All of a sudden she calls, oh, okay, well, we'll get out and reduce these sidewalks. But it's not until people complain before we do that.
And we have replaced a lot of sidewalks in the past couple of years. And we put a budget towards that, $50,000, and we are replacing sidewalks as they get reported and getting sidewalks repaired. But that's not what's being presented to us tonight. What's presenting, I could tell you there is a need for apartments. There are a lot of kids that can't afford homes, but they're waiting right now. One is my daughter. She can afford to buy a brand new home, but she's renting right now just because of the interest rates. And she's hoping that the bubble will crack a little bit, because right now, you're gonna spend $350,000 on brand new home.
Oh, no doubt.
So, there is a need, there is a waiting list for people to move to Fortville right now. Okay, and why do people want to move here to Fortville? Why did I move here to Fortville? I'd always knew that this was gonna be a place of growth. That's why I bought my house where I bought it. I thought, oh my God, this is a house that's in a commercial property. I can fix it up and I can make a return on my property. Same thing, when I moved here, I knew this would be a good empty nester community when I first looked at it because of all the 800-900 square foot homes. And nowhere in Indiana can you walk to a grocery store, walk to your dentist's office, walk to your eye doctor, walk to downtown. So you're gonna get more and more people that wanna come here. The walkability, you can't live in Greenfield and walk to your grocery store. You can't live in Fishers and walk to the grocery store or to your eye doctor, all these things. That's what makes this community why people want to come here. And that's what's driving it a lot, is our main street.
I totally get what you're saying. It just, if you're doing a single family neighborhood, it needs to be a single family neighborhood. I mean, I can respect these people wanting to sell their property for as much as what they can get out of it. The lady back there said maybe it's not worth what they want for it. I don't know. I'm not a.
Well, it's worth what they're asking, because somebody's willing to pay it.
Well, exactly that. But on the flip side of that, they're wanting to put something in that is just not, it just doesn't fit in the situation that you guys are trying to present.
I know, but
Right next to something that's already there. It looks just like that video.
I was just up here to ask a question about property values and multifamily adjacent to it. I don't have a study, no longitudinal study that I'm aware of that's been done in, Fortville or your community. I can tell you that there are national studies that indicate market rate development does not negatively impact surrounding single family property values.
You just said you didn't have those studies.
The national study.
You just said you didn't have any studies, and you said national studies.
he's saying, magic.
I provided my.
Thank you.
Knowing you all ran for office, became politicians, whether you like to or not. And one of the anguish that the American people have is politicians aren't listening to us. And, okay, you're not listening to the people who voted for you. And whether you believe in it or not, whether this should go in or not, I think you gotta listen to your voters. We've had a petition with 214 or 215, whatever. If you had that many people in favor of doing the department, then you gotta balance it somewhere out, and somewhere along the line, you gotta vote for the people who voted for you to represent them. And you gotta take your personal aspect out of it. You lost that when you became a politician. And unfortunately, too many politicians forget that, and they vote their personal opinion versus who they're representing. And I implore upon you, if you've gotten 500 people said, yeah, we want these apartments, then that's the majority, and that's how this country should run. But if you don't have that many, start listening to people who are voting, who are telling you what they want. I mean, that's the whole reason for an open forum, and we can go back and forth about pluses and minuses and all that kind of stuff. But it comes down to people here voice their vote. This is what we want as voters. And it's up to you as politicians to go to the people who are voting and do their will. And if you forget that, then that's why you have people rioting in the streets, that's why you have people screaming at each other, that type of thing, is you lost track of why you're sitting in that seat. Okay, so I implore upon you, listen to your people in your community. Vote their will. That's your job as a politician.
Would be nice to be. Yeah,
You got a lot.
I mean, I hear you all in threat. You got, I will say this, you got less than 1/20 of the population. You've also got 19/20 of people. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Well, people that want the apartment complex, they're not as passionate as to come in here and argue point all of the community people in Winston or Timber Red, all them are just not gonna come in here. Okay, yeah, we want apartments, but really, they're not gonna.
Yeah, they had the same opportunities we did to come.
That's right.
There's not one here, not one,
That's the same.
not one here.
If you're here, but if you're here, then so be it. I'm saying, is I haven't heard.
I know Libby, you were there, you never finished what you were saying. You got to the one point.
Well, see, that was 10 minutes ago. and I already forgot. I'm really split because as you say, listen to the people. We do, we listen and we are very considerate about what you guys are saying. We talk about it, we run into each other. I've thought about this. It's hard when you see the other side of what's best for the town as a whole. And what we have to do and the decisions we have to make to benefit the town. So that's why I sit on the fence on a lot of these issues because I think it's a great project. I lived in Meridian Kessler, and I lived in a duplex. I think I said this last time. I lived in a duplex that I owned half of it, and there were several in a row, and then there was a beautiful like $500,000 home, and then there was $1 million home, and then there was an apartment complex. So I kind of this is natural to me. The main street, I have renters that are above my store. I have 6 apartments upstairs. They don't have a parking lot. They park down the street. I don't hear them complain. That apartment complex is always full.
That's not them.
No, but there's an apartment complex right there too, that has always been there. So I'm just saying that those are the considerations that you have, that we've been thinking about.
Those are some of the, well, hang on, those are some of the considerations that we were thinking about the whole time is how do we develop Fortville? And when you go to other communities, there are housing in, when you're in downtown situation like Greenfield or Carmel Fishers, all these, they all have where there's apartment complexes, there's $1 million apartment complex, and they're all intermixed inside the town limits in the downtown. So that's why this project, we're looking at just the project, not it's about the other thing. Now, I do have concerns about the traffic study, and we did talk about that. That is one thing that we need to think about, putting stop signs here and there, and whatever has to be done.
I don't see that as a downtown area personally.
The kids never connected. Never been connected, yeah.
Even if it was, it's not downtown. Even if the road went through, it's not downtown.
Town's little, so.
Even if you go to Greenfield, or anything like that, you're gonna see a mixed use of that.
Tanya,
Yes, ma'am.
I live at Main and
I know.
I'm a business owner. My business is in what you guys would call your living room.
Yeah, I understand.
And when we have girls' night out,
Yeah.
will anybody walk up the sidewalk to my house? No, because it's residential.
Well, it's still residential.
It's not mixed use with businesses. That's 2 blocks south.
Well, we're talking, that's residential too, where those apartment complexes are gonna be put.
Single family is what she means.
But that's not what's on the,
We understand that.
on in front of us. When we take a vote, it's what's in front of us. We can't do a lot of what ifs that never will maybe never happen unless some. Unless some.
There's not a what if there is. Have you ever had a single family developer approach you purchasing property?
No, but the only people that have the veteran approach, we were all.
Right.
Apartments.
It sounds like you guys have made up your mind.
I'm just presenting facts, is all I'm doing. I mean, it's nothing, it's not emotional, it's just the facts as I see it. That's it.
But at the same time, couldn't he have that land split into small lots and build single family homes and sell them that way and not have someone approach him to do that? He would just go to the county and get
He's
that.
not
money.
maximizing his gain for his property.
But that's not right, but at the same
No,
time,
it's-
that is one way to sell that property to save his money off of it, just like you would put the apartment.
You gotta be more infrastructure when you build any single family house. If you're saying
Yeah,
right now. that-
absolutely, but I'm just
yeah.
saying, if you're looking at selling it and this isn't gonna work, this is another option you can use to make it in the area.
And then that's his choice. He can afford to sell, you know.
Absolutely, I totally understand.
You know, I've been sitting there telling you that. It's not like that.
I got a fellow in the back that had his hand up for a question, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Mike Kelton. Nowhere tied to this project. I came to talk about the pole barn this winter. But this is the first I've heard about it. And it's a pretty interesting conversation. My impression is that this is our one and done opportunity for this apartment complex, and we're all afraid of losing it. It kind of sounds like we don't want to let this go. Is that true? Is this, if we don't capitalize on,
When you say one and done, what do you mean, like?
is this the only opportunity we'll have?
No,
to
this
develop,
is,
an increase in dwelling in Fortville?
to answer your question is, so I just make sure we're all on the same page. This discussion's been going on for over a month now, so this is kind of the end point here, but
Yeah.
so your question is this the last opportunity that may come about?
No, is this, if you look at Fortville, it seems like we're all very concerned that if we don't maximize this opportunity, then we're not gonna have another one.
Oh,
And I don't know that that's the case, because I understand it's a pretty desirable area. And if this doesn't get developed, is it gonna be 18 months or 3 years before another opportunity is won? I don't know the answer. But it seems like that might be driving our position, is we better take advantage of this now. I'm not so sure that's the case. I don't know.
no, that's a very fair question. It's something that this council presented with a lot, actually. And I can say without a doubt that way of thinking has never driven my decision making. I've actually shared with all of my council peers and Joe and Adam that, you know, at the end of the day, you need to be able to, if it doesn't feel right, you need to be able to walk away and leave it just as it is. At the end of the day, and ultimately, you can determine that. So to your point, I've made decisions, passed on decisions before because of that exact philosophy that will be another opportunity. And to your right, the one thing I think I agree with most of what you say is Fortville very desirable. There's a lot of folks that want. Just leveraging that.
Yeah.
Okay. So next step. Mr. President, or you want-
We need, someone needs to make a motion.
I like the apartment, I think they look great. I think Main Street always did intend to go through because there's a Main Street in Timber Ridge. Now, I heard Mr. Peter say that it intended to go through when they did Timber Ridge. And then there was some kind of confusion and they cut off and didn't let it go through. That's true, I don't know. All I know is there is a Main Street in Timber Ridge. Would lead you to believe that that street always intended to go through? I like the apartments, and market rate. I don't think we need any more low income housing. I think there will be enough of that with the national street, but I like my living center. This will give the opportunity for the younger generation to come down those miles.
So I ask, if I may, so do I understand correctly that Timber Ridge is not completely rented out, that there are empty apartments already in Timber Ridge? I'm sorry, Ridgeview. Is that correct? That's incorrect? So it is full.
There is a waiting list on all the apartment complexes in Fortville.
Thank you.
And we're talking about market rate apartments. The people that are gonna move there are gonna have a decent salary to afford $1,600 a month for an apartment,
Thank you.
which that benefits us. And we,
I can see how it benefits you guys.
well, it benefits us all as a community.
If they don't work, you can work on those, you're not gonna get their issues.
I have a quick question. Has there been, there's one 94 and, has it been, other than this spot, is there any other place that these apartments can go? Has it been ventured out to find out?
There's nothing right now.
I don't know.
No, there's nothing that came across our board.
There's no land for sale within Fortville anywhere that's.
And we, there is no body that has approached this board, or they might have approached Adam. Or Joe, they don't tell us every single thing, like bringing in this confidentiality on the projects. But right now, there's no other apartments right now.
But there were on Broadway.
Well, the Broadway project that was always in the master plan to have a commercial on the bottom. That project was strictly gonna be for workforce housing only with no retail on the bottom. So if you want to build on Broadway, you have to have retail on the bottom, and you have to have apartments on top. Other than that, that is why that project failed. It did not meet that standard that we set.
There are other reasons, but.
Well, that was the main reason. You gotta have retail on the bottom. And
When do you guys want to make a motion? I'm prepared to make one, if you know what that is. Someone else wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to change zoning classification review West PUD ordinance number 2022-60.
that a second,
I second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Do you want to address the condition about the siding?
Yeah. I think
Oh, my God.
Those Japanese are on
Their request
Thank you,
was
sir.
to approve that, not have that condition about the other property. I just wanted to be clear what you're approving and add consensus by the planning commission or with the stuff. Doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I just want the record to be clear for you guys. And also this year, you know,
what we'll do on, since 25 year got changed in 20. So really, here's the thing we have to do. We have to go back, if we're gonna say, no, we want you to have the siding in the original one.
You don't have to. You don't have to go back.
you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, in one possible avenue, and it take more time, is the petitioner could ask for a modification of the PUD on that piece. Maybe procedurally.
you were correct, but I want it to be clear for the council and for petitioner, what exactly you're.
Would you be more comfortable if you could modify the another vote, striking that, or because the way it is, leave it stays in.
I would make a motion to strike it off there.
How do you need to do that?
So, you made the motion.
Yeah, amend your motion.
So I make a motion for the change of zoning classification, Ridgeview West PUD ordinance number 2022-16 to strike the contingency of the party siding on Ridgeview.
Can I get a second?
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Thank you.
All right, new business, council consider request from Debo Cook LLC. For tax abatement for lot 2 and lot 3.
Can I pause for a second? Do we want to do the TIF bond request first, keep it all together for this? And then have, the property come up, we want to entertain the
Yeah, we can.
TIF bond first before we go to the next.
Okay, council consider a TIF bond request for proposed Ridgeview West Apartments on North Main Street.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't this go back to RBC to facilitate this and the requirements and everything? Is that how that works?
Well, now,
We're not, you know, with the interest and all that, isn't that what RBC does?
this is something that I think you're approving in concept, and Russell address it as well. My view of this is just like with MBA, as you all will remember very well, even Libby, that it's quite the process with different boards,
Right.
and we create it. Fortunately, though, and we've talked about this last night, that we don't have to go through the creation of the Economic Development Commission and the other commissions. Those are in place and already have members, so that will expedite that process. But what you're doing tonight, I think, or what I understand the ask is to approve the revised ask on the amount. And then as Buzz mentioned, it looks like he's still up there. The actual terms of that
I'm here.
would be in a bond agreement with the interest rates, and you would populate that with all of the schedules and whatnot that Buzz puts together his team, and then the petitioner would look at. So it's going to be quite a process. I may be misunderstanding what the ask is tonight, but I thought it was just a concept. Is the council on board with this amount on a 20-year term?
If it's okay, I'll say that Alex and I did talk about it. The concept was, we want your heads not in, this is something that the majority of the council is comfortable with, this is back. These parameters that would be, because we're about to spend as much money on bond financing, on going through this process, that all Alex and I don't have to work for free, most days, but we're about to spend a bunch of money, so we wanted the heads to say yes, this is where we're going, before we venture out on that process.
My only concern on this would be, I emailed everybody on this earlier in the week, is there's a couple things. I agree with what you're saying, and the need for this from your perspective. I would feel more comfortable unless it's just out of the course of the normal procedure. But this doesn't have a term, and I know that was simple what we discussed. I feel more comfortable with this indicated a 20-year term. Clearly, we don't know the rate yet, so it goes out to market. But you got the amount, there's no term in here, and then there's an incorrect date down here at the bottom.
Well, I don't know if these will go out to market. I don't.
Well,
it's gonna be
like
in the
right, based on the approval of this bond.
fair enough, but not like a regular old
No,
geo bond.
correct.
Put them out.
That's not. Yeah. But there is a typo that is replaced on the date on the bottom paragraph.
Yeah, so I think if it was 20 years after the completion of the project, we would extend it. So
So that's the intended term, 20 years post completion of the project. I have pro forma that shared with you shows. And I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know the date.
It looks like that lines up, because it's talking about December 22nd, we've got a 3-year build out. So we're gonna be at 23 soon, 3-year build out, puts us at 26, and then I think that lines up.
Next construction, yeah, I think it'd be 2025, December 31st of 2025. Actually, no, it's 20, it says, yeah, we're doing 2 years, it's 20, we're approving this year, be 2024, with fully assessed by January 1st, 2025. So I think that's right. That's, yeah. No, no, no.
Fully assessed, fully assessed, fully sold.
Right, that's one.
So that we're gonna find the,
So partial, partial.
Well, and again, I don't, and that's why I'm looking for council for and buzz, because on the bond term sheet, it's properly,
It's fine, like a lot of things that we've done, we can agree and handwrite it, actually pretty, especially since the signature page is actually pretty copy. That's the pitch, but what I just asked council is perhaps in the TIF bond financing paragraph, add a final sentence, the term of the bond to be 20 years from the date of completion. So something that addresses that. So
And then the last sentence, I think, our intention there would be fully assessed. On January 26th, from here around 27th. To potentially have a partial assessment of January 1st, 25, and then fully assessed January 1st, 26th. But again, those will all be scheduled, but that's the last.
Yeah, the expectation would start with 23. That'll take us to 25, complete the partial assessment, 25, and then not the full.
yeah, so
so do we want a motion on this, or what's your guys' time frame? Are you meeting this tonight?
I mean, it's just the commitment to begin moving forward with everything else, because we're gonna, well, I'm not going to, but I think from this, we're gonna.
We go to a project, we get a project agreement, final form, we go RDC through expansion of the TIF area, the economic development commission will meet to approve and come back here. So there's several steps.
which will, like with other projects, we'll put together a timeline for you, so for everybody, so you can see here are the steps, and here's when these are expected to happen, and trying to get to bond to engage it, so the construction can start and wrap it up. Is that
Our hope would be by the end of the year, we have a agreement on this, so we can start building this spring.
I don't think it's I mean, I can make the motion for the council to consider moving forward with the Ridgeview West project TIF bond term sheet with the addition of a term not to exceed 20 years from completion, and then changing the on or before date down here in the time.
Would you, and Russ, would you December 31st, November 31st, instead of November 31st, something like that? That'll be here before we
Figure,
know it.
but I didn't want to, right, so I have to make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. I have it, thank you.
You sign, I can send the cover sheet back to.
I know we got one.
Oh, no, we
We
do.
got more buzz. Sorry, buzz, I was trying to set you free.
Did you need signatures on that?
Yeah, yes.
Or, we gonna make our own signature lines on there? It was just kind of one. I think it was, we'll write it. We'll write it. We'll write it.
That's what we're here for, that's what we want to decision.
Now we're ready for,
Back to the.
Yeah.
Send that back now.
All right, so for the next item is to consider a tax abatement request presented by Debo LLC and their consultant Ginovus. It affects two lots. It's lot 2 and lot 3 of the new Debo Park, which is the industrial park on the south side of West Housing Board. So this is the project by which there were 3 lots that were platted. It's where Dean's waterfront services located on the south end. The tax abatement request went to the redevelopment commission at their previous meeting. They received a positive recommendation. The developer can give you a little bit more specifics, but what I can say is a brief overview is what they're looking for here tonight is similar to the last request in that there may be some additional steps that might need to be taken in terms of creating what's called an economic revitalization area, ERA, which is within the TIF district. But what they're looking for tonight is just a concept that you be get your name out there. General parameters, but specifically what they're looking for is they like to build 2 light industrial spec buildings. And it would be a typical 10-year tax abatement on each of those. We have Buzz run some numbers on what the total amount of the tax abatement would be over the 10-year period. And it's amounting to a little over $1 million total for the entire project. What else? The only other bit of information that I have to add is from a staff perspective, what we had recommended was since for this particular project, we want to make sure that if you're comfortable with doing an abatement, that you're abating uses, the best quality uses within that type of zoning district. So for instance, they had, one of the tenants they were looking for at one point was a gymnastics center. And in our opinion, that didn't seem to be like something that would be, that would qualify for a tax abatement. So, the developer has worked with the town to add, I think, 5 different bullet points on the types of uses that would be available, things like anything employment driven, like industrial or manufacturing service, works, and that was for the. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
How specific can we be on that? Like, when you put light industrial, we had somebody wanted to try to put a concrete mixing machine up there on that.
Well, that was more heavy industrial, but.
Yeah, so is this heavy industrial, this
No.
here,
No, this is light industrial.
all light industrial?
Correct. So, the easiest way to explain light industrial is it's like warehouses, basically no smokestacks, nothing. But to answer your question is, my advice would be that it's in the best interest of the town to, put as many reasonable parameters as possible. Since this is a spec building, which I think is in and of itself to give an abatement on a spec building is generous. But you want to make sure that it's incentivizing the right types of uses that's going to.
But Henry, if I don't think they're kind of this, or what?
Yeah, we had 6 pool about this. Yeah, so here is, I'll just state for the record what these.
Would the traffic allow for distribution then on that road?
Well, those are all things that we'd have to look at, in more detail.
This building won't have dock doors, these are just overhead doors.
So
There's no dock
there
doors in
was,
this building.
there was one building,
A second building will have a maximum of 2, which is more consistent with manufacturing. I'm happy to answer your question.
okay, let me, yeah, it's the northwest, lot. That one had already gone through site plan approval through the planning commission, so at this point, they just need to submit their final construction documents. So, lot 3, which is the one directly north of these, that would need to go to the planning commission for approval, so, answer your question, traffic that might be generated, that will all be vetted, when they go submit the actual site plan for lot 2. And lot 2, we're in good shape because they've already got us plan for. Lastly, the uses, what they're proposing is any use that's permitted under the current zoning and has related uses or businesses for distribution, service industries such as HVAC, construction, mechanical, electrical services provided for residential, included manufacturing of any kind and assembly of any kind. So, certainly, if you all my advice is that that's like a reasonable.
Hey there, my name is Mike Cook. Paul and I are the developers. One of the reasons why we're asking for the tax abatement, well, 2 reasons. Number one is a triple net building, so all of the associated tax costs are then passed through to the tenant. And second of all, we've had over 150 inquiries for this type of space, but no one that will wait until 12 months after we can build it. So we really have to get this before we can stick a shovel in the ground in order to get going, because trust me, it pains me to no end to turn down 150 people that need space within the next 6 months. And we're going to fill those apartments with the people that can afford them that you just approved. So thanks. If you have any other questions?
Can they walk to work?
There's a path.
Oh, I'm sorry. My personality.
But I can answer any of the questions. The building's gonna look exactly like Paul's building, maybe a different band of color. Sandy, take that out. I'm not a fan of that color, but
But in screening, it'd be similar to what's there now.
yeah, on the first building, there's 0.55 acres that could be outside storage, but it'd be screened exactly like Steve's waterfront is today. Thanks.
Do we need to do any other, by adding these on, you're taking on all the responsibilities for right there, out there, 1,000, what has to be done there?
Did the requirements that officials wanted us to do within our project.
Streets and full line, bigger, how much is that?
Officials. Part of.
But there's no issues out there with having. To put it like a turn, like if they have a lot of people moving in there at one time, is there enough access where they can put in the, what they call the dimples or whatever they call
So we thought
the blisters? Blisters.
Yeah.
Blisters are-
You're gonna have the officials.
It kind of is already.
Is there? Okay, I haven't really taken.
It's beautiful areas.
Okay, do I get a motion or is there more discussion, any public comment? Living?
I struggle with calculating spectrum. We got a small list of what could be proposed, but right now, we don't know job, we don't know what the business is, we don't know. So basically, we have a shell in the building. I understand and respectful of their concerns, I definitely was. That's my only, it's truly still speculative, I agree with that, but it's generous to consider a maintenance for. I don't know that we've actually done the maintenance on spectral. That's not mean we would never.
Even if they don't, they still have to pay the taxes on that.
They'll understand, but the primary function, in my opinion, is the tax abatements are job generators, which we don't know what that's gonna be. They're saying they're gonna be job generators, we don't know to what extent. Right?
Just like
That's right. That'll be the annual responsibility.
That file.
State of the block is the.
We take it away and make it.
Yeah, we can do it. Yeah,
We can take it away.
we weren't meeting there. Yeah.
It's just
My conservative concern.
You want to,
No, I think that. The road is gonna go. And again, I wish them best of luck. I mean, that's what we want to see is jobs in town. So
let me ask you one question that came up. Please, I like them, how they moved downtown and left Greenfield. They're still on the hook for the abatement on that building. They still pay, even if that building sat empty for years, they still owe the taxes on that building.
I'm not familiar with,
Okay.
with it, but generally speaking, yeah, once it's there,
It's still there.
it's set that somebody's, whoever owns the property is responsible for it, is going to need to write the check, or it's gonna go to sheriff's sale. And somebody's gonna be able to pick it up. Now, what I don't know, full disclosure, our firm represents Elanco, and I actually helped on some of the zoning for downtown. So I was in Russ's position. I don't know. I don't know what agreement they have, but someone is going to be responsible to pay for the property tax, whether that building sits empty or
It's on its assessed value.
Yeah.
correct.
So what needs to happen?
I think we may make a motion to, which one?
Accept the request for.
I think you have to read.
I got it. I don't really make it. Comment.
You gotta get this thing.
I make a motion to consider or approve the request by Debo, Cook LLC, Ginovus for tax abatements for lot 2 and lot 3 of Debo Cook Park on West 1000.
Can I suggest one provision? It's subject to the additional steps that we need to take. We do need to have some resolutions, expand the ERA.
Subject to the additional steps that we need to take. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Jeff.
Very well.
Well, you got a chance to meet, new hires. I have them on my list here, and thanks for letting them go where they can get out there. I expect them to be, yeah. I expect them to be fresh and ready to go early in the morning. Second reading for the, fee schedule for the Parks last meeting, ordinance 2022-9. We did not have that on the agenda for this meeting tonight, and we'll have that on for the next meeting. And unless you got anything in there.
No, I still haven't heard from Heath on his intent. That was one of the questions, what he's intended. I've got changes that Robert put on his, so.
Right. We'll try to do that rest. I don't know, the next meeting. The other thing I've got is, I reported to you guys, at the last meeting, that you were wanting to get alleys paved on the north side of town. We were looking to do the 3 segments between, Michigan and Monroe this year, and then hopefully we'll be between Monroe and Illinois the following year. It's been a real challenge to get prices. I've met, I've talked to and walked the project with a couple different, paving companies. One of them walked everything with me, and then after that, they made a phone call. Another one, really wanted it. I mean, when I went on that, how much want to do the job? Best I can get from them is a text on price. She really give me a quote. So, I didn't get an actual quote from her, but her price was $47,900. Is
that what you were kind of expecting the cost would come in?
Yeah, pretty close. And then,
Is that asphalt?
and then, the one contractor that did give me an actual handwritten, quote here, to do all 3 of those segments, if you do them at the same time, the price for $41,375, and that's cash. I assume that's,
So you're talking about
Oregon asphalt
for all
paving.
3.
What's that?
He's doing 47, and we have to sign contract, he'll do 41, and then do another 41, and then another 41, or all 3 segments.
Now, there's 3, if you'll, one,
Yeah.
there's 3 segments. He broke them all up, he's only going to do a little one at a time. But if you do all 3 of them, there was a cost savings. But to do them all was $41,975. If you want to look at doing the particle, then I'm going to give you those numbers.
No, I don't know, do it all. I thought you said on the whole thing, and then if we could do the 41, then you come back next year.
Okay, we'll redo that next year. And I did check with Beth, and she was gonna put that in my budget for this year going to. So we just have to move some money around and make that happen. You folks want to move forward on that?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to allow Joe to move forward with the bid of $41,000, or the $375 to pay the first alley going.
Second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Guys have it, thank you.
I will contact them tomorrow and get it going. Thank you.
Anything more on Broadway, start time, or I saw them pouring out there.
I believe they're supposed to be in those things. October, so they're getting really close. And then call it Alex.
Any other questions for them? No. Okay, Adam? Any questions for Adam? Did you, were you able on that, were you able to, set up some kind of meeting, kind of explain that contract a little bit more, what we can expect, that it's kind of broken up into like 4 different sections. We get 15,000 for a grant writer to set it all up, right? And then the lion's share is for the coring, testing. And then we get the phase 3 is another smaller section, which is the most expensive to do. But then the fourth one, that's the one I'm not familiar with. It's the 15,000 to set up a committee. Or what was, that's what I need.
So this is for the EPA Brownsfield agreement. Well, first, right now, we are reviewing the request for qualifications. There were 2, maybe 3 submittals. And then we can select a consultant here, probably within next week or so. To answer your question, there would be a meeting with the chosen consultant and the EPA, our representative, to go over some of those specifics. So certainly, if you want, I would encourage you to be in on that meeting. So you would, there's not a conflict because it's interesting to learn some of those specifics. So there's a lot of very technical information because there's so very limited law.
But like for Alley Street over that too, because it says in there that we're on the, it seems like in the wording, I'm not, that we could be the town, even though we think we finish this grant, but there might be some where we have to put up a portion. If you read a section of that, and just, I don't want to. Yeah, let's look it over before we move forward. It seemed like there's a little hook in there where if they did the testing on 2, that the town would, I don't know. I read it, make sure we're not up. We go through this, I'll send out a deal. Thank you, Adam. He's not here. This not here, she's not here, the attorney.
So as Joe mentioned, and we all know, we're in the process of acquiring a couple properties. We've already acquired some properties for the Madison Street extension to the south. One of those properties is the 611, 613 High Street property. We were supposed to have a call to show cause hearing that ultimately they typically would go that you go for the judge, explain why the town, explain the project, the offer was made, the property owners get to present their objections. Their objection has been and is that the town didn't make a fair offer to them, but that's why the process out of court appoint three court-appointed appraisers, but then we get their appraisal, and then you start the negotiation. So unfortunately, the court last minute continued our hearing today until October, so we're still waiting. You know, hopefully though, I may be able to talk to the attorney for the other side and see where things are, and so we'll just keep trying to work on it as we move forward. The other 624 High Street, we had to do notice a little different because the property owners, the 4 siblings, I believe, that have an interest in it, and we could not get service on them, regular certified service. So we have finally completed the special process we need to do for notice, so that will be moving forward as well, and we'll get that filed with the court so we can wrap up that property in the near future. The other piece that Joe and I talked about, we talked about the last council meeting, was the house removal of the house. So Joe and I have a plan for that. We could get that, whether we designate it surplus or not, put it out to bid because we know that we need to have that house gone to do the improvements that need to be done for the project. So it's just a matter of timing and when that makes sense, and we'll put together that proposal and get that out. Joe and I can work together on that. So I think those were one other thing. Pat's not Bratton is not here. So I'll mention it. He's talking to me about it. He has a deal where he's negotiated a deal with the county commissioners that Fortville PD will transfer 2 surplus vehicles to the county in exchange for radios and some other equipment the town needs. And so the process for that is that the council will consider, and if you approve, adopt a resolution allowing for that transfer of property. The county commissioners will adopt a similar resolution. So that'll be before you as well. Get that property back forth. But that's what I had, unless you have any questions. Fire department's still gonna use that property from training until that time.
I've not gotten back to the, we'll discuss that at the fire meeting, so there's definitely. Yeah. I'm thinking about that walk around. So, I didn't see any harm around when they brought the Texas. Do it for the code. And be ready to discuss that with you. Well, it wasn't the chief. I know. You might want to go with that. There might be. Well, the thing is, there might be an opportunity. I'll see it. Right. Well, I think that if you guys, if you do, it's serious money. But I know that they express. Motion was good, but I will repair it.
Fun part, you guys have been waiting, public comment.
Sure, everybody on council knows that we're all from Old Bridge. The way I look at it, because of the stop work order and the permit being pulled, that it was a mistake getting the permit to start with, because all of our homes are stone or brick. And that building going up is a pole barn with metal siding and higher than all the homes around. I want to propose that it be condemned and tore down.
Right now, they are negotiating. We had a letter from, can we? say
Public
anything?
record.
Okay, well, we did get a letter from Jake, and, they're coming to a plan to negotiate.
So what?
Discussion. It's just discussion, what needs to be done there.
Between Jake and the town.
Jake in the town right now, but you'll know.
Yeah, anything that the council does has to be done in public, so any decision like that would be.
Because you'll see it.
The discussion is including for me, so.
Is there any kind of time frame, you know, or discussion? Just
That I do not know. I would expect that to be.
You get it, well.
No, we're not trying to hide it. It's just being discussed now between Jake and the town and what that agreement will look like. They haven't reached time frame yet. Cost or really a resolution that it just started, so. But one of the discussion is the move more of the building.
Well, I know there was talk that the pole barn structure was too high and violated the town ordinance, so. I guess knowing that, it's like, well, it either violates it or it doesn't, so.
Right. That's what they're in discussion about. Okay,
We're working on it.
we're working on it.
Yeah, it's just built on a regular lot that is designed for housing.
Right.
The one, it's the same, I've been there 35 years. That lot just been sitting there. Anybody can buy and build a house, but no one, we'd all known that they're gonna build. One of us would probably bought the lot to keep it like that, you know. I know somebody's gonna build a 3,000 square foot pole barn out there.
Right. Right, and then, like I said, that's been put a stop order on. That's all we're waiting to move forward. Okay. But you'll know when it'll be on the agenda. Okay, because he'll have to, if he wants to go forward, he'd have to go to zoning, right? To ask for a variance, right?
Who's that zoning board? Is that you guys?
No, it's the BZA.
It's Fortville,
Separate.
not the county, it is Fortville.
Correct.
And that's the one that requires a public.
They are together.
It would. There'd be a public, if that's the way this goes, Jake would have to submit an application for a variance to allow however he would choose to try to address the situation out there. And again, that's only with respect to the town's zoning ordinances. Understand that you all have your own covenants for your neighborhood, that's a separate piece. But you would get written notice of that application because you're close enough. Well, most of you, I assume, are close enough to the property. It's 2 properties with 500. And at this point, we just send notice the whole neighborhood. We know that you're there. There'll also be a sign posted about the public hearing in the yard 20 days before, 10 or 20 days, 10 days before. So you will know if that's the avenue. If it goes, if the council, there's an agreement made between the council and Jake as to wherever that ends up, tearing the building down. I'm not sure where, you'll know that too, because these guys have to make that decision in a public meeting like this. So it'll be on the agenda, they would be in agreement, and we would go that route. But as Fritz and others said, it's early in the negotiation. We just received the demand or the demand letter from Jake last Thursday or Friday.
Yes, what was it called? The town?
Notice of claim.
Yeah.
Notice of claim, that's what he said. Demand letter, notice of claim. And he wants us to respond by the end of the month. So, so we are working.
I'll work hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. All right, tell the, Libby, Tanya.
I'm pretty sure I said I'm not.
Maggie?
Robert, I stole my time, or Tanya stole my time. I said it up to them.
Okay, I don't think I'm in either.
Pretty time out.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Kevin?
Make a motion to adjourn at 9:48.
Right, second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
You got it.
Oh, do I do this?